A small Minnesota town is rocked by the brutal murder of a 16-year-old boy at what should have been a safe, fun sleepover. Levi Axtell, the alleged killer, walked 6 miles through the night to commit an act of unimaginable violence. Hunter Callahan was a beloved son, a loyal friend, and a bright light in his community. Known for his kindness and love of basketball, he had dreams like any other teenager. But on a night meant for laughter and camaraderie, his life was stolen in a crime that has left the entire town searching for answers. But as the investigation unfolded, chilling questions emerged. Was this an isolated incident or the first act of something far darker? Levi's calm demeanor following the crime left investigators and neighbors questioning whether this was a crime of passion or the calculated beginning of a dangerous path. Hinckley, Minnesota, a town of just 2,000, was turned upside down by the unimaginable. Neighbors who once felt safe now double-locked their doors. Parents pulled their children closer, fearful of a world where a friend could become a predator. Levi Axtell confessed to the crime with chilling simplicity. "I killed Hunter." But why? What drove him to destroy a life and leave an entire community grappling with fear and disbelief? What makes a young man commit such a cold-blooded act? And could this have been prevented? Welcome to CrimeByte, your window into the darkest corners of the human psyche. In this episode, we delve into the chilling case of Levi Axtell, a teenager whose shocking act of violence turned a sleepover into a nightmare, leaving an entire community reeling. Together, we'll unravel the events leading up to this tragic night, examine the haunting questions surrounding Levi's motive, and explore the lessons society must learn to recognize warning signs before it's too late. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more stories that uncover the darkest truths. In the heart of Hinckley, Minnesota, life was defined by simplicity and trust. Neighbors waved from their porches, and parents sent their children off to school without a second thought. It was the kind of place where doors were rarely locked, and community events filled the town square with laughter and familiarity. But that fragile sense of security was obliterated one chilling morning. The news spread like wildfire. 16-year-old Hunter Callahan had been brutally murdered in his own home during what should have been an ordinary sleepover. The alleged killer, Levi Axtell, a 17-year-old friend who had walked 6 miles in the dead of night to commit an act of unimaginable violence. The town was paralyzed. People gathered in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones, each voice tinged with disbelief and fear. How could this happen here? Hinckley had its share of hardships, but nothing like this. Parents clutched their children tighter, questions swirling in their minds. Was this a random outburst of violence, or had the killer been hiding in plain sight all along? The local school, usually bustling with the energy of teenagers, fell silent. Counselors were brought in to help students process the tragedy, but even the professionals struggled to find the right words. Hunter Callahan had been a vibrant presence, known for his love of sports and his infectious laughter. To those who knew him, his death was not just a loss. It was a rupture in the fabric of their close-knit community. Levi Axtell was no stranger to the townspeople either. He had been a quiet, reserved teenager, often keeping to himself but never drawing attention in a negative way. Many described him as polite, even timid. No one could reconcile the boy they thought they knew with the cold-blooded act he was now accused of committing. As investigators worked to piece together the events leading up to the crime, the town's unease deepened. Whispers of unanswered questions and possible motives rippled through the community. Had there been a hidden animosity between the two boys, or had something deeper and darker been at play? For a town like Hinckley, this wasn't just a crime, it was an assault on their way of life. The streets felt quieter, the air heavier. Trust, once taken for granted, was now a fragile thing. Parents began to question their children's friendships, wondering if they truly knew the people their kids spent time with. The tragedy left an indelible mark, not just on the families involved, but on everyone who called Hinckley home. It was a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, darkness could strike without warning. Was the town's quiet facade hiding deeper troubles beneath the surface? The night began like any other sleepover. Hunter Callahan had invited friends over for pizza, video games, and the carefree fun that defined teenage friendships. By all accounts, the boys were in good spirits, their laughter carrying through the house as they debated over who had the best gaming strategy. Levi Axtell wasn't among the initial group. At some point during the evening, he began his 6-mile journey to Hunter's house. The reasons for his late-night trek remain shrouded in mystery, but what is clear is that Levi's steps were heavy with purpose. Text messages and call logs recovered from Hunter's phone showed no indication of conflict or tension. In fact, Hunter and Levi had been friendly, if not particularly close. The lack of warning signs only deepened the mystery surrounding what happened next. As the hours ticked by, the house felt quiet. Most of the boys had fallen asleep, unaware of the events unfolding in the shadows. Levi arrived at the house unnoticed, slipping inside with chilling ease. What happened in those final moments remains a grim question that only Levi can answer. The crime scene told a story of calculated violence. Hunter was found lifeless, the signs of a brutal struggle etched into his surroundings. Forensic evidence suggested that the attack was sudden and overwhelming, leaving the victim with no chance to defend himself. As dawn broke over Hinckley, the house transformed into a hub of law enforcement activity. The other boys, still reeling from the shock of what had occurred, were taken in for questioning. Their accounts painted a picture of confusion and terror. None of them had seen Levi arrive, and none could explain why he had done what he did. Levi's actions raised more questions than answers. Why had he targeted Hunter? Was there a simmering conflict that no one knew about? Or was this an unprovoked act of violence, driven by impulses even Levi himself couldn't explain? Was this act planned, or did something snap in the heat of the moment? Inside the Callahan home, the scene was nothing short of haunting. What should have been a sanctuary of safety and comfort had been turned into a place of horror. Blood stained the walls and carpet, telling a grim story of a life taken too soon. The once vibrant home now felt cold and desolate, its silence heavy with the weight of tragedy. For investigators, the scene was a puzzle of brutality. Every detail pointed to a calculated and deliberate attack. The positioning of the body, the weapon chosen, and the signs of struggle all hinted at a methodical approach, rather than a crime committed in the heat of the moment. Levi's actions during the attack baffled seasoned detectives. The precision of his movements and the sheer force he used suggested a level of detachment rarely seen in someone his age. The bedroom bore the marks of a ferocious struggle, but it was clear that Levi had maintained control throughout the horrifying ordeal. The other boys at the sleepover, still in shock, described waking up to the aftermath. Their accounts painted a chilling picture. The once lively and joyous atmosphere had been replaced by panic and disbelief. None of them could comprehend how the night had taken such a violent turn. As family members arrived at the scene, their grief was palpable. Hunter's parents, overcome with emotion, could barely stand as officers tried to console them. The loss of their son was not just a personal tragedy. It was a shattering of the trust and safety they had always believed in. Detectives meticulously combed through the house, gathering every piece of evidence they could find. Each item, from the knife to the footprints, was carefully cataloged and sent for analysis. Yet, as they pieced together the physical evidence, the question of motive loomed larger than ever. What drove Levi to commit such an act? Was it a sudden burst of anger, or was there a deeper, darker force at play? His methodical behavior during the crime and his lack of hesitation suggested that this was not an impulsive act, but something far more sinister. Could Levi's actions point to a darker pattern of behavior? After the brutal attack, Levi Axtell did something that left both investigators and the community stunned. He walked 6 miles to the nearest police station and turned himself in. His confession was as chilling as it was unexpected. Without hesitation, he admitted to the murder of Hunter Callahan, detailing his actions with a level of composure that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard him. "I killed him," Levi said plainly. "I walked in and I did it. I knew what I was going to do when I left my house." The officers listening to his confession struggled to reconcile his calm demeanor with the brutality of his actions. There was no anger in his voice, no visible signs of regret or panic. Instead, Levi spoke as if recounting an ordinary event, his tone steady and measured. As investigators pressed him for details, Levi revealed more about his state of mind. He claimed that he had been planning the attack for days, haunted by thoughts he couldn't explain. Yet, even as he described his intentions, he offered no clear motive. His confession raised more questions than it answered, leaving detectives grappling with the enigma of a teenager capable of such calculated violence. Forensic psychologists were brought in to evaluate Levi's mental state. Their initial assessments painted a troubling picture of a young man wrestling with inner demons. But was Levi's calmness a sign of detachment, or was it a calculated attempt to control the narrative? His behavior suggested a level of self-awareness that was both unnerving and puzzling. As the investigation continued, the community's shock turned to fear. If Levi could commit such a heinous act without hesitation, what else was he capable of? The possibility of deeper, darker tendencies lurking beneath his calm exterior became a chilling thought for everyone involved. Could Levi's calm demeanor mask deeper, more dangerous tendencies? Hunter Callahan was more than just a victim. He was a son, a friend, a teammate, and a young man full of potential. Born and raised in the close-knit town of Hinckley, Minnesota, Hunter was known for his infectious laughter and boundless energy. His friends described him as the glue of their group, always ready to lift spirits with a joke or a kind word. On the football field, his determination was unmatched, earning him a reputation as both a talented athlete and a humble team player. For Hunter's parents, his loss is an ache that will never fade. His mother, fighting back tears, recalls the last time she saw him. He kissed me on the cheek and said, "See you tomorrow, Mom." I never thought that would be the last time. His friends, too, are haunted by his absence. He had this way of making everyone feel special. One close friend says, her voice trembling. The world feels darker without him. Hunter's death sent shockwaves through the community. Candlelight vigils were held in his honor, the soft glow of hundreds of flames lighting up the night, as neighbors, classmates, and teachers gathered to remember the young man who had touched so many lives. His school retired his jersey, a gesture that brought both solace and heartbreak to those who knew him. But beyond the grief, Hunter's family is determined to ensure that his story doesn't end in tragedy. They've channeled their pain into advocacy, speaking out about the importance of recognizing warning signs and addressing mental health struggles in young people. "We can't bring Hunter back," his father says, his voice cracking. "But if his story saves just one life, then his death won't be in vain." Hunter's legacy is one of resilience and love. His family and friends hope that by sharing his story, they can spark conversations about violence, accountability, and the importance of community support. They want the world to remember Hunter, not for the way his life ended, but for the joy and kindness he brought to everyone around him. How can we protect other young lives from similar fates? The investigation into Hunter Callahan's murder was as complex as it was heartbreaking. From the moment Levi Axtell walked into the police station and confessed, investigators knew this case would demand a deep dive into the psyche of a young man capable of such violence. What they uncovered painted a chilling picture of a life marked by isolation, frustration, and warning signs that had gone unnoticed. Levi's digital footprint offered the first clues. His social media accounts revealed a pattern of troubling behavior, posts about feeling disconnected from his peers, artwork depicting violent themes, and vague messages hinting at inner turmoil. To those who knew him casually, Levi seemed quiet but unremarkable. To investigators, these posts were red flags waving in plain sight. As detectives dug deeper, they discovered journal entries that provided even more insight into Levi's mind. Written in shaky handwriting, these entries spoke of anger, loneliness, and a growing obsession with control. One entry, dated just days before the murder, read, "I can't keep this inside anymore. It has to come out. They'll all understand once it's done." Levi's past also came under scrutiny. Teachers and classmates described him as an introvert who often kept to himself. Some remembered moments when his anger would flare unexpectedly, but these incidents were brushed off as typical teenage behavior. In hindsight, one former teacher admits, there were signs, but we didn't see them for what they were. The methodical nature of Levi's crime left investigators grappling with an unsettling question. Was this his first act of violence, or the beginning of something darker? His calm demeanor during the confession and the deliberate steps he took to carry out the murder suggested a level of planning that was both chilling and rare in someone so young. For the detectives working the case, the hardest part wasn't just uncovering the evidence. was understanding how someone so young could harbor such destructive tendencies. What had pushed Levi to the breaking point, and could anyone have intervened before it was too late? As the investigation continued, one question lingered above all. Were there missed opportunities to prevent this tragedy? Teachers, friends, and even family members now grappled with the possibility that Levi's path could have been altered if someone had recognized the signs. Could someone have stopped Levi before it was too late? Levi Axtell's actions stunned everyone who knew him. Friends, teachers, and even casual acquaintances described him as quiet, reserved, and unassuming. But beneath that calm exterior lay a mind simmering with turmoil. What drove this 17-year-old to commit such a calculated and violent act? Psychologists and crime experts pored over every detail of Levi's life, searching for answers. Experts began by analyzing Levi's upbringing. While there was no record of significant abuse or neglect, Levi's social interactions revealed a pattern of isolation. Former classmates noted that Levi rarely participated in group activities and often chose to sit alone during lunch. One peer remembered him as the guy you'd see in the corner of the library, sketching or writing, but never really talking to anyone. Levi's online activity painted an even darker picture. Investigators uncovered disturbing searches in his browser history, violent crime documentaries, articles on serial killers, and forums discussing the psychology of murder. Combined with the journal entries found in his room, these details suggested a growing obsession with violence. Forensic psychologists noted several warning signs of escalating behavior. Levi's fascination with violent imagery and his feelings of alienation could have been indicators of underlying mental health struggles. Dr. Lisa Warren, an expert in criminal psychology, stated, Levi's journals suggest he was grappling with deep-seated anger and a desire for control. These are common precursors in cases where young offenders commit acts of extreme violence. But the most disturbing revelation came from Levi himself. During his confession, he admitted that he had thought about committing violent acts before. It wasn't random, Levi said, his expression blank. I knew what I was doing. These words left psychologists debating whether Levi's crime was an isolated incident or the first step in a darker path. Was he a troubled teen who snapped, or was he on the road to becoming something far more dangerous? Some experts argued that Levi exhibited early signs of psychopathy, traits like a lack of remorse, calculated planning, and an eerie calm under pressure. While it's impossible to diagnose posthumously, the possibility raises a chilling question. If Levi hadn't been caught, could he have gone on to commit more murders? Could Levi have become a serial killer if not stopped? Hinckley, Minnesota, is a town where everyone knows everyone. It's a place where people greet each other by name, where doors are often left unlocked, and where the community rallies together in times of need. But the murder of Hunter Callahan shattered that sense of security. In the weeks following the tragedy, the town was gripped by grief, fear, and an overwhelming sense of disbelief. Hunter's friends and family led the charge in ensuring his memory would never be forgotten. The local high school retired his football jersey, a symbol of the joy and determination he brought to the field. His parents spoke at community gatherings, urging others to look for signs of trouble in their own children's lives. If someone had reached out to Levi, Hunter's mother said during one meeting, her voice cracking, maybe this wouldn't have happened. The murder also sparked broader conversations about mental health, teen violence, and the responsibility of the community. Local schools implemented new programs focused on emotional well-being, teaching students how to recognize and address signs of distress in themselves and others. Counselors were made available to anyone struggling with the aftermath of the tragedy, but beneath the unity lay a lingering fear. If a tragedy like this could happen in Hinckley, what was stopping it from happening elsewhere? The town's parents became more vigilant, checking in on their children more often and monitoring their online activities. Teachers began paying closer attention to students who seemed withdrawn or troubled. Despite the fear and heartbreak, Hinckley found strength in its shared grief. Neighbors supported one another, showing that even in the darkest times, a community could come together to heal. As one resident put it, Hunter's death will always haunt us, but it's also brought us closer. We owe it to him to make sure something like this never happens again. What can be done to ensure such horrors never occur again? Levi Axtell's trial became the focal point of Hinckley, Minnesota, a small town desperate for answers and closure. The courtroom was packed each day, with Hunter Callahan's family seated in the front row, clutching photos of the boy they lost. The trial wasn't just about determining Levi's guilt. It was a search for meaning, a desperate attempt to understand why a seemingly normal teenager would commit such an unspeakable act. The prosecution's case was damning. They presented Levi as a calculated killer, someone who planned his attack during the 6-mile walk to Hunter's house. This was no moment of passion, the prosecutor declared. This was premeditated murder. Evidence included Levi's internet search history, which revealed a chilling curiosity about violent crimes and how to evade capture. The prosecution also highlighted the brutality of the act, calling it a deliberate, cold-blooded execution. The defense, however, painted a different picture. They argued that Levi was a deeply troubled young man whose actions were the result of a fractured mental state. They called psychologists to the stand, who testified about Levi's isolation, possible undiagnosed mental health issues, and an inability to process emotions in a healthy way. This is not the mind of a killer, the defense attorney said. This is the mind of a child crying out for help. Testimonies from Hunter's family brought the courtroom to tears. His mother described the joy Hunter brought to their lives, recalling his infectious laughter and unwavering kindness. He was my baby, she sobbed. And now, because of Levi, I'll never hear his laugh again. Friends shared stories of Hunter's generosity and dreams of becoming a teacher, a career he would never get to pursue. Throughout the trial, Levi remained stoic, rarely showing emotion. This lack of response left many in the courtroom unsettled, questioning whether he truly felt remorse. His own testimony, however, provided a glimpse into his thoughts. Levi admitted to the killing, but claimed he couldn't explain why he did it. I don't know what came over me, he said. I wish I could take it back. The jury deliberated for days, torn between the competing narratives of a calculated killer and a broken teenager. When the verdict was finally read, guilty of first-degree murder, the courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow. Levi was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a punishment that brought some closure, but also left lingering questions. For the Callahan family, the verdict was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but nothing could bring Hunter back. We have to live with this hole in our hearts forever, Hunter's mother said outside the courthouse. But we hope that sharing his story can save someone else. Did the verdict bring closure, or was it only the beginning of a larger conversation? The murder of Hunter Callahan sent shockwaves through the Hinckley community and beyond. But from the ashes of this tragedy, important lessons began to emerge. Parents, teachers, and law enforcement agencies asked themselves hard questions. How do we recognize the warning signs of a troubled teen? How can we intervene before it's too late? Mental health became a central focus of the community's response. Schools implemented new programs aimed at fostering emotional resilience and teaching students how to seek help when they or someone they know is struggling. Counselors worked with families to navigate the complexities of teenage mental health, emphasizing the importance of open communication and early intervention. Hunter's family turned their grief into action, establishing the Callahan Foundation in his honor. The foundation provides resources for at-risk youth and advocates for stronger mental health support in schools nationwide. We couldn't save Hunter, his father said at the foundation's launch event, but maybe we can save someone else. Law enforcement also took steps to address the broader implications of the case. Police departments across the region began offering training sessions for officers on how to identify and respond to potential signs of violence in young people. These initiatives aim to create a more proactive approach to preventing tragedies like Hunter's murder. But the case also sparked a national conversation about the role of society in addressing teenage violence. Experts emphasize the need for systemic change, from increasing access to mental health care to fostering environments where young people feel supported and heard. It's not just about reacting to violence, said Dr. Lisa Warren, a leading psychologist. It's about creating a culture where it doesn't happen in the first place. As Hinckley continues to heal, the town holds on to the memory of Hunter Callahan as a reminder of what was lost and what can be gained. His story serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action, a plea for vigilance, compassion, and change. Hunter Callahan's story is one that haunts us, a bright future extinguished by an act of unthinkable violence. His memory serves as a stark reminder of how fragile life can be and how crucial it is to recognize the signs that often go unnoticed. But it also reminds us of our responsibility to listen, to intervene, and to create spaces where young people feel seen and supported. The tragedy in Hinckley forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How many warning signs are ignored, dismissed, or misunderstood? How many lives could be saved if we acted sooner? These are not just questions for Hunter's community. They are questions for all of us. At CrimeByte, we believe that awareness is the first step toward prevention. By sharing stories like Hunter's, we hope to ignite conversations that matter. Conversations about mental health, accountability, and the hidden struggles that often lead to tragedy. This isn't just about telling a story. It's about making sure this story isn't repeated. Hunter's life, though tragically short, has left an indelible mark on those who knew him and even those who didn't. His legacy is a call to action, a plea for communities to come together, to be vigilant, and to prioritize the well-being of our youth. It's a reminder that no community is immune to violence, but every community has the power to fight it. This has been CrimeByte, where we shine a light on the darkest corners of human behavior. What can we learn from Hunter's story, and how can we apply those lessons to prevent future tragedies? Join the conversation below. Share your thoughts, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. How many more lives can we save before it's too late?